Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crown Report. My name is Brittany. Today is Tuesday, November 18th, and we are going to go over the royal news of the week. Of course, we're going to talk a bit about the BBC apologizing to the Princess of Wales for using Kate Middleton quite a few times in their recent broadcast. And I'm going to sort of analyze and explain some of why they might have been doing that, what were the issues behind the scenes, and if we will ever see a change, because I have some thoughts. And then we also have some update in the case of Marius Borg Høiby, and that he has apparently been violating some of his restraining orders, just recently being seen with one of his ex girlfriends who is bringing some of the charges against him. Of course, that raises so many red flags and so many questions. And then we also do have a case just developing that I've heard about in Sweden with a former employee who was caught apparently trying to chat with underage girls. So that is obviously a very, very serious situation. And it has some interesting implications for Queen Sylvia and Princess Madeline, which is why I use their pictures, as Queen Sylvia has an organization that is trying to fight against such things on the internet and protecting children as they're growing up. So obviously that was probably a huge concern to them at the time. Of course, the man has been fired, but I do think it's a rather interesting case to go over. We also do have a recent interview by Lady Frederick Windsor, Sophie, talking about the challenges that the royal family face. We have Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, over there in South and Central America doing a royal tour and some other royal news, including an idea that perhaps is Andrew really been stripped of all his titles or not? Is he just like barred from using them legally? There's actually an interesting case, I guess, where some people still have questions about the legalities of Andrew's current situation. And of course, what does that mean for Harry and Meghan as well? So we shall get into all of that today. So, guys, thank you so much for joining in. But let's begin with this sort of first story. And it's one I've definitely addressed a couple of times, but I think it's worth delving into a bit here, because the BBC got a lot of flack recently. It was Artemis Day, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had gone to do an official engagement. And apparently, on the live broadcast, the person doing it kept referring to her as Kate Middleton. And I sort of understand why that could be, let's say, something that remains happening. And it kind of comes to this whole history that we have with Catherine, with the history she's had with the internet, all these sorts of things. And I do get a lot of questions. Well, why doesn't this happen to Sophie? Why doesn't this happen to Diana, the Princess of Wales? So I do think it's very worthwhile to explore here. And just to sort of give a bit of a background, when you look at the case of especially Diana and Sophie, both of them came into the royal fold pre-internet. Obviously, Diana was very much before internet, and Sophie married into the royal family just as the internet was starting to slowly grow. So she was mostly in there she married Edward, I believe, in 1999. So it was really 2000 plus where the internet really kind of went wild, you could say. And people really started to use it very, very constantly, because Catherine is really the first, you could say, royal woman who was post internet. And this doesn't happen in other royal families as well in some cases, because they often married their husbands in the very, very early 2000s. So 2001, 2002, 2003, we have Metamart, we have Maxima, we have Letizia, we have Mary. All of them got married in those very, very early days between about 2001 and 2003 and 4. And so you have to kind of consider that situation when looking at the case with Catherine. And I will say, when it comes to the BBC in particular, I think because they are the British publication, they should be more focused on using, obviously, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, especially in the live broadcast. But what has happened, I think, because Catherine is or started her life post internet, at least public life, people are very, very used to Kate Middleton. That hasn't really changed. I'm sure that's what she's seen most titles of articles about. And it's just something where it has become sort of the styling and what people say. And it's encouraged, of course, by the internet. And you have social media added into that as well. And so all these factors come in because it's even interesting to actually look at the Google search when I did. So BBC apologizes to Kate Middleton. And so why BBC apologized to Kate Middleton? BBC apologizes to Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, for calling her Kate Middleton. So it like you can actually see there's a little bit of cheek here in the title of this particular article from the Daily Beast. BBC apologizes to Princess Kate. BBC apologizes to Kate Middleton. And like, so they're still actually even using Kate Middleton. So even though the BBC is apologizing for it, most of the articles, and granted, a lot of these are American ones, still will refer to her as Kate Middleton. And I just don't really think this will change that much. Let's check out the Daily Beast one. Unfortunately, we can't get the full statement here because I was even trying to find the BBC apology, and all I kept coming up with were other posts from other organizations, of course. And so the network has said they received complaints from people unhappy that they didn't use the Princess of Wales's correct title during the coverage of Artemis Day. During our coverage of memorials to commemorate Artemis Day, we mistakenly referred to Catherine, Princess of Wales, as Kate Middleton. These were errors during hours of live broadcasting, for which we apologize. Throughout our Artemis Day coverage, more broadly, we refer to Catherine by her correct title. So that's sort of just like a little bit of a fascinating bit here. And that they had to apologize, I think, goes to show that there was an immense social media reaction to it. And I have seen this as well. And I have seen this obviously from people because I have used Kate Middleton as well in titles, and people, they tend to just freak out. They tend to get so mad and angry. And it comes very much, I would say, from more of like a fan reaction. Because yes, we all know her title is Catherine, or those of us who watch royals consistently know it's Catherine, the Princess of Wales. But everybody else in the world knows her as Kate Middleton. And the reason people do, the reason why I do not think this will change, I think it may change when she's queen, but she'll still be Princess Kate. She'll maybe be Princess Catherine from time to time, which isn't even correct. The problem is, of course, is that when it comes to the title, it's really, really long. Catherine, the Princess of Wales. I'm not sure how many characters that is, but that is a massive number of characters. And at least when I'm using YouTube, now this is not the case in all articles online, is that you do actually have character limits. So I have 100 characters I can use in a title, and every single space of that is usually filled. If I hit 100 exactly and I can put every word in that I want to, that's like a really, really good day. And we do that because people recognize the name. People identify less with the Princess of Wales as Catherine's name. They just do. They just do. And I think the higher level British publications, should be more careful about using the Princess of Wales. We see that in the Telegraph and the Times, and I think the BBC should fall into that bucket. But most other outlets will still constantly use Kate Middleton. That will not change no matter how much people complain. It just will never change. And the reason is that because there has been such a catalog of Kate Middleton, and that's how people came to know her, as obviously her and William were dating. That all got cashed into the algorithm's history within the internet itself. She first came to prominence as Kate Middleton. So the algorithm knows her as that. And yes, it can change up with the Princess of Wales, but even when I put Princess of Wales into Getty Images, the first pictures that come up are still Diana, because as the internet grew, the Princess of Wales was obviously Princess Diana. And so as sort of time, you could say, goes on, and we did initially have as well the Duchess of Cambridge. So Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, exceptionally long. Again, that would not work in an actual title. It's why in an article, that's why people don't use it. They didn't want to use it. It was too long, it was too cumbersome. It wasn't something simple. Because the disadvantage that the Brits have compared to some of the other royal families, particularly the Scandinavians, is that the Scandinavian titles are very simple. The first title they have is Prince or Princess of something. So when Sophia married into the royal family, she became Princess Sophia. It's not hard. It's not difficult. It's not Sophia, the Duchess of da, da, da. She does technically have a ducal title, I think, through her husband, because all their kids do and everything. But the dukedom titles in Sweden don't have that much weight compared to the title of Crown Prince or Princess. So even, Crown Princess Mary, easy to remember, easy to write. It's very simple. So Mary Donaldson didn't really stick, not to mention the fact, I think the other disadvantage that Catherine has is that because her and William dated for so long, you have a good chunk of almost 10-year history on the internet of her being just Kate Middleton. And even when I'm talking to people or sharing what I do and they ask me, how's Kate Middleton doing? They never say Princess of Wales. They never ever say Princess of Wales. It's always Kate Middleton. It's how she is known in the public zeitgeist, is as Kate Middleton, sorry. And so for kind of, I think the vast majority of the time, even the newscasters, yes, they should be better about it, but Americans especially will, I think, always use Kate Middleton because the title is not simple and easy. It's kind of difficult, and people know the name Kate. And so because of that, even if it's not exactly maybe what they want, I think sometimes there's something to dealing with the reality of the situation. And you're not going to get everything you want out of it. You're just not going to get it. And I think Catherine would drive herself crazy if she was constantly going, don't call me Kate, don't call me Kate, don't call me Kate. She would drive herself crazy, which I think sometimes is what people who are very into this will be passionate about, is constantly going, well, call her Catherine, the Princess of Wales, Princess Catherine, whatever. You're just probably never going to get exactly what you want out of the situation. So it's best to kind of accept that some things aren't probably going to change. Now, we could see a switch when she becomes queen for sure, because the other problem is that you have in this situation a name that's constantly changing. So we had the Duchess of Cambridge for a period of time, then it was the Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge for 2-second period there, and then it was Princess of Wales. And that's just not easy. And it's not Princess Catherine. It is Catherine, the Princess of Wales, because on her own, she can't hold the title. So again, you have this complication where the title isn't easy. Diana eventually did sort of become known as Princess Diana, but that's not really actually how her name was styled at all. And so again, you have this sort of complication here that will never really ever fully change. I think it'll still, even when she's queen, oftentimes she'll be referred to as Kate Middleton. And yes, the BBC did apologize, but they'll still probably title their articles Kate Middleton. They will do that for what they call search engine optimization reasons, so SEO. And it's unfair. It's not what people want, but at the same time, when you think of everybody else, not just the people who follow royals very closely, which is a really small subset of the population, but when you think of everyone, everybody knows her as Kate Middleton. And that's just going to probably be the case in the future. Meghan will never really be referred to constantly as the Duchess of Sussex. She'll probably even lose the title. It's not really the thing. And it's not about, as somebody said here, respect first. Making money out of disrespecting her should be second. It's when you, unfortunately, so this is Najma says that, but unfortunately, the reality is news is about making money. If nobody can find you, if nobody can find the article you're writing, if nobody can find the profile you're writing because you're sticking so closely to the titles, it's not going to actually benefit you to actually write anything about her. It's not going to be worthwhile to you to cover her because nobody's going to find it. That's sort of the rub here of the situation. Because like it or not, the world is really about making money. Everything has to turn, and people aren't going to do something unless really they get traction out of it. Yes, you can do some things where you know that's not going to be the case, and I've done it, and I know others people just do it too. But that is a reality. That's not the one people want, but that is the case. So Geeky asked here, how is Princess Catherine longer than Princess Madeline? Makes no sense. In a title, so Princess Madeline's name, she's always gone by Madeline. She was born Princess Middleton. Big difference. Big difference. She was born this daughter of a king. And so Princess Madeline has always been Princess Madeline. Her name has never, ever changed. It's always been Madeline Bernadotte or Princess Madeline. So you do have that key difference there. As well, Catherine is not Princess Catherine. She's Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Again, another complication there to the confusingness of royal titles in the UK. Again, Scandinavian titles are much simpler. Yes, Madeline has a dukedom, but nobody really knows her by her dukedom. Again, big change. So it's, yeah, I think Alice Ransom Ray's here has a good thought. I think there's also a generational change here. People are more informal now in color. Kate is more casual, and that's preferable in this age. I would agree. I would agree. So I just don't think, because of kind of the complications here. Again, you have title issues, you have, for people who are writing, you have character limitations and these sorts of things. You have to keep things to where people can find them. And I know that's not what everybody wants, but if articles can't be found because people are sticking too closely to the title and nobody's searching for that, then at the end of the day, they won't cover her anymore because it's not worthwhile for them financially to do so. You do things because it sells papers. That's just how the world is. That's why, you know, sometimes things are sensationalized or some good stories get buried and these sorts of things. It's because of how sort of the world churns, and that's been the case forever. You know, once they started writing papers, you know, they sensationalized Jack the Ripper, and they did because people wanted to engage with it. And so it is unfair to Catherine in many ways, but I think her and her team have just expected that. And I think there is a justification for holding the BBC, the Times, and the Telegraph to a higher standard. I would argue perhaps some of the other British broadcasters as well, ITV, we have Sky News, should be, obviously because they are British, be more careful about the titles. But articles, I think, there'll still be a lot of Kate Middleton. I don't think that'll ever change. Even when she's queen, it might get a bit better, but it's just going to be one of those things that's going to be a challenge to change, especially when you have another change in the offing for her title. We do know she has used Kate before. William has referred to her as that. They did try at the very beginning of their marriage to sort of make the switch and say everybody should call her Catherine. That's what she prefers to be called. Didn't stick. It didn't really stick. So I don't think it's going to stick this time either. But it is interesting that the BBC felt that they did have to apologize for it, that they got enough flack. But it was a very important day. And it was a day that they should have been more strict about it. But you have a lot of broadcasters who, again, all they see is Kate Middleton. And that is going to be sort of how things go for the foreseeable future. Again, we will see. I am interested to see how things will change when she does become queen, because I think that will, especially given when it might happen, that might have a really big, like that might really, let's say, determine what is used. But obviously, queen is much simpler. Actually, interesting situation as well. That when it comes to Queen Mary of Denmark, actually, if you put Queen Mary into some of the photo search engines, she is superseded oftentimes by ... the Queen Mary boat. Queen Mary boat. So if you just put Queen Mary in, you'll probably get the boat in that's like the Queen Mary is now, I think, in, what is it, Long Beach, California. And there's also one that still, I think, sails, Queen Mary 2. So actually, even in that situation, because again, something has superseded the name within the vernacular or within the search history of the internet, which is the Queen Mary boat, Queen Mary of Denmark has to share her space time with a boat. So just a funny thing to consider as well. That's why oftentimes I have to put in Queen Mary of Denmark, because sometimes too I get uh Queen Mary of Tech. I'll get her as well. So that's Queen Elizabeth's grandmother. She'll come into play too. So you do get a lot of these situations where you get multiple reactions, because if somebody has come into, let's say, the internet first, or the internet era first, that's who most people see first, because that name for them has been used a lot more than somebody else. So actually, when it comes to Catherine, Princess Kate, or Kate Middleton, she's the only one that has that name. Ergo, it's much easier to identify her within the search engines. Now, sometimes it's interesting. I'll still, when I'm searching for pictures, I will put in Kate Middleton and I will put in the Princess of Wales, and I do get differences in the pictures sometimes. So I just thought that is an interesting consideration to put out there as well. I do find that quite interesting. So that's just something to keep in mind. And again, I know some people will still really try to push the idea it's Princess Catherine, Catherine the Princess of Wales, or whatever. I will just tell you right now, at least when it comes to especially anything in print, it'll still be Kate Middleton. Just gonna tell you all right now, I don't foresee that changing. Again, we may see something change in the future in other respects when she becomes queen, but right now, because of the complicatedness of English titles, that they're not just so, let's say, straightforward, we will have complications. Because another interesting consideration, of course, is Princess Amalia, who is technically the Princess of Orange. Now, when most people refer to her as the Princess of Orange, like technically that is her title and technically that is used, but it's mostly Princess Amalia. And her name is actually Princess Katharina Amalia, but people mostly say Princess Amalia. And I've started to do that more because in the vernacular of the Netherlands, that's what most people use. So again, all these complications to consider here. And this is the reality of having a royal title, is that it's not as clean and simple as some people want it to be. And if you are expecting news sources to use always the correct titles and everything, they will probably use it in the article just so they don't say Kate too much or Catherine too much. They'll mix up the language because it makes it more interesting to read. But they will probably always put in the title and probably put in the first paragraph, Kate Middleton, to help with the search algorithm. And because they need their articles to be seen. If they're not seen, people won't read. So, and if people won't read, they don't cover them. And so that is just what the news looks like. So again, an interesting story for sure. And we do have Christine Gilbert, who became a YouTube member. Thank you so much, Christine. And we do have Teresa Hold'em, 1630. Thank you so much for the super chat, who said, hello, all hope you are okay. I think it's also because of Harry and Meghan Rat Pack as well. They say Kate Middleton because Rachel calls her Kate out of disrespect for Princess Catherine. Yes, that could definitely be the case as well, is that because what I have seen within the royal watching sphere, and I have been somebody who's been watching royals very, very closely for well over 10 years now, is that because of the pro Harry and Meghan crowd and pro Catherine and William crowd has developed that has actually similar tendencies to the Sussex squad. And so I think in order, because they're reacting to Harry and Meghan's attack. So you have this other side here too, and they're seeing this and they're going, well, no, it's disrespect. We must call her, Princess Catherine, which again, isn't even correct, or Catherine, the Princess of Wales. And they do that because the other side says Kate Middleton. But again, you're looking at 20 plus years of internet history at this point of using Kate Middleton, and it's well ingrained within the search algorithm. And you will always have a competition with just using the Princess of Wales with Princess Diana. So that's something, again, to be aware of for the future for sure. And we do have Carol, who gifted 1 Royal News Network membership as well. Why, thank you so much, Carol. I really, really do appreciate it. So Cynthia says, and yet the newspaper headlines and national broadcasters were quick to change Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to formerly known as Prince Andrew. That's a long name too. Well, yeah, but it is going to take a little bit. They want to do it. That's part of the situation too. And people want to see it. But yeah, I still say Prince Andrew sometimes. And there's still be titles that say Prince Andrew. It's just going to be, just kind of be, going to be what it is for the future. And yeah, especially in the States, as Penn says, it'll always be Kate. It'll pretty much always be that. So that's just, again, kind of how we get to this point, is that that's just going to be how it is. People know her so well as Kate Middleton. So I don't think it's worth much to really kind of go off on, let's say, and like force broadcasters to change, because again, they're going with what actually people know. So yeah. So let's go ahead and move over, and we'll do a little bit here on Catherine's recent event she was at. Let me get it here. She was recently at a summit for, let me pull up the name here again because I had it here just a second ago. So she was at the Future Workforce Summit organized by her Early Childhood Foundation, the Royal Childhood Foundation. So she gave a speech here. Now, what I do find to be somewhat, let's say, challenging about sort of this route Catherine is going down with, obviously talking to a lot about the how important love is early in childhood and everything with these business leaders, is that you can't control what goes on in somebody's home. Yes, I think the point here is to adjust the like kind of allow for that very important work-life balance, which of course is very good to highlight. But at the same time, there's a lot here she can't control. And there's a lot here that really depends on personal home dynamics. And that is something that is wildly out of really anybody's control. And so, in some aspects here, I find this to be a little bit untenable in some ways, because you can provide all the research you want. We have a lot of the research already to know the importance of early childhood. So, and the love that parents show and everything, but at the same time, you can't control what happens inside other people's homes. You would think something's natural, and it's just not. So I do find that to be a little bit of sort of the drawback here of sort of this angle I feel like she's going down, is that, again, wildly outside of their control. So let's listen to a little bit though of this here.
So my passion and the work of the Centre for Early Childhood stems from one essential truth: that the love we feel in our earliest years fundamentally shapes who we become and how we thrive as adults. A loving home.
So that is, of course, exceptionally true, and a good avenue for this organization. But I mean, my always question is, how do we kind of move this into tangible results? That's sort of the question I've had for sort of a long time. We've obviously had some great studies come out from the Early Childhood Foundation, but again, some of this stuff is all depending on what happens inside the home, and that's something definitely you can't really, you can give people the best tools, but they still don't always embrace them. So that's sort of, I think, the great challenge with Catherine's foundation. And of course, William's challenge with Earthshot is not all countries are going to agree, not all companies are going to agree. And so in some ways, you're speaking into the void, because not everybody's going to respond the way you want them to, and they're not really required to. So again, both of these foundations have great efforts, but also big limitations too.
Ultimately teaches us how to love and how to care. But every environment has the potential to shape our hearts. Every one of you interacts with your own environment.
So that is true. There are so many different environments, and especially schools. So schools works, and I think, again, what they're trying to go for here is, I think, encouraging work-life balance. But it all depends too, at the end of the day, bottom line always wins. It just kind of always does.
A home, a family, a business, a workforce, a community. These are the ecosystems that you yourselves help to weave. Imagine a world where each of these environments were built on valuing time and tenderness, just as much as productivity and success.
So it's a great thought, but as probably not really, again, something really achievable. But people can try. But that's always going to be, again, the limitation here. That's going to be the limitation. And I think that's important to discuss, because if you're not aware of the particular limitations of your projects and stuff, I think you're going to be somewhat let down. And if people are encouraging, yeah, this is going to happen, it's not really going to change probably that much, because at the end of the day, the bottom line really is what most companies are shooting for, because that's how they exist, is that their bottom line is filled. So again, these are the challenges.
As business leaders, you will face the daily challenge of finding the balance between profitability and having a positive impact. But the two are not and should not be incompatible.
So that's a great speech from Catherine. And obviously, it's something that she has a great passion about. But again, I'm just curious what some of the firm metrics are for some of this, because there's too many variables to actually track. That's, again, the limitation here. The limitation is that there's far too many variables. Every home is different. Everybody has a different definition of love and off in many ways. And companies do, yes, want to give, of course, as much balance as they can to people with their families and things like that, but people can take advantage of it at the same time. If they need something done and somebody just can't consistently show up because of family issues, that is going to cause a problem. And so in a perfect world, yes, all those metrics could be easily met. Everybody could get on the same page and all be good. But at the end of the day, this is a little bit really too complicated, and I feel like a bit more of a strongly nuanced situation that's probably not really ever going to be fully resolved, because we know the importance of love within families. But people are people. That's just sort of kind of something, especially as I read through history. I read a lot of history. I read a lot of kind of watch people interactions and stuff like that. And it's just one of those tired and true situations when it comes to humanity, is that we know the things we should do and we never do them the way we should, pretty much. We just never do. And it comes from living in a sinful, broken world. And that's just it. So everybody can do what they can within their own homes and try to give people as many resources as humanly possible to give their children the best lives possible. But people are people. And that's just the reality at the end of the day. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I think something where, again, I think Catherine and William should be well aware of some of the limitations of their programs, because I think that's really important for them to have. So now we're going to move on to Marius Borg Høiby, which is obviously the case within Norway, which has gotten even crazier, if that's humanly possible, in this particular situation, because apparently Marius has violated his restraining order against his ex-girlfriend, actually meeting her in town that week. So this is a paparazzi shot from, I think, probably last year. So it says, on Thursday last week, Siogahor was able to reveal that Marius and his girlfriend, the so-called Frogner woman, had arrived at the intimate drink bar F6 in Oslo together late the night before. The bar is centrally located in a popular nightlife area in Frogner. The other bar patrons were able to freely observe how the Crown Princess Mette-Marit's son entered the nightclub side by side with his former girlfriend before they found a table and sat in close, intimate conversation. At the same time, two more victims in the criminal case were in the same nightclub. That's even what's the crazier thing. Other victims were in the same nightclub. And so in their presence, Siogahor described as accidental. So the other girls. But the fact that Marius and his ex-girlfriend were together, however, is anything but coincidental, according to sources. Again, this is just absolutely crazy. The situation, 3 offended women in the same premises as the defendant in surprisingly in any case just a few months before the trial starts in Oslo. So the day after the revelation, the ex-girlfriend's legal counsel met Yvonne Larson, confirmed that the meeting had taken place. So the meeting in question was coincidental, and these are two people who have gone their separate ways and who met. They had a good chat and went their separate ways, she said in an email. He's not supposed to be meeting with her. He's not supposed to meet with any of these women that he is accused of assaulting. Horg has today gained access to an anonymized version of the Oslo Police District's latest decision on the restraining order. In a letter, police attorney Andreas Kruzinski states that Marius still has a restraining order against his ex-girlfriend. The visitation ban for the protection of the so-called Frogner woman was first decided by the prosecution on September 2nd, 2024, which I believe he's already violated a couple of times. Like at least once for sure. That's why he was rearrested, was for violating this restraining order. But also as well, he is violating it like seemingly again and again and again. And so it's like, ooh. In other words, it happened about 4 weeks after the first violent incident took place. And the police attorney writes about the further history. The visitation ban was again extended by the prosecutor's decision on May 28th, 2025, and then extended again by the decision of August 28th, 2025. The latest ban has a duration of 6 months until March 2nd, 2026. This means that Marius is prohibited from seeking out and contacting his ex-girlfriend until well into the main hearing of Oslo District Court, which starts on February 3rd. So earlier this spring, Marius was neither successful in the district court, the Court of Appeals, nor the Supreme Court's appeal committee, which rejected the appeal in April. After this, he has chosen not to take further legal action to have the ban lifted. However, the last word has not been said, according to Marius Borg Høiby's defense attorney. We are in contact with the police about the basis for the restraining order. Beyond this, I have no comment on this time. The fact that the ban is still in effect means that police are now facing a new violation. It is unknown to CEO Core whether the police or the defense attorneys were aware of the incident before the revelation last week, but it is expected that the police will now have to decide whether to open new investigations. According to what we have reason to believe, there will be no new charges against Marius after the incident last week. If anything further is to happen, the initiative must therefore come from the police themselves. Whether the police have already taken new measures in the case is not yet known. During the ongoing investigation, questions have been raised several times about whether the Crown Princess's son has received special treatment from the police. This has been the topic of both books published about the case this fall. So, obviously, huge issue for this case going forwards. And you got to wonder if the case potentially could be like thrown out or something, like with these violations, with him contacting potential victims or like having conversations with the alleged victims. Does this violate the rest of the case? Like, does he basically break the case now? I don't know. And so it's just really kind of disturbing and sad. And this is the definite huge problem that Norway is facing in many ways is this case and Marius and his behavior. How much of it was covered up by the palace? How much did the palace know? Because I think the palace knew quite a bit about his behavior. And now he, again, is continuing to, I think, revisit old habits. And this is part of the case. Like part of the case for him, I think, in the future is to go, hey, I'm like totally fine now. I went to rehab, which I think apparently he was trying to go to again recently, even though he went in December, escaped, and then went back. And then anyways, so much. But this Marius case just has so many potential pitfalls for the Norwegian monarchy because this guy, yes, he is not a blood royal, meaning he will not be king. He's not in line of succession at all. But he is the older brother to the future queen, the older brother to her brother, a prince of the realm who will probably be somewhat, maybe a little bit of a working royal. And he was raised pretty much by Mette-Marit and Haakon. And so these two, all this together, combines to raise serious doubts about Mette-Marit and Hakane's parents, their ability to be king and queen. What elements have they associated with in their lives? Because Marius would bring his criminal friends around all the time. And that, again, includes and extends to Princess Ingrid Alexandra. So, very, like, oh my goodness, so many things about this particular case. So many things. So let's move over. We have another one here. I think this is kind of covers a little bit of the same ground. And so what is now happening around Marius Borg poses a question to the Norwegian police that they can no longer avoid. The Supreme Court has also ruled so freely on the town. So it says late Wednesday night, he met his girlfriend again, now less than 3 months before the trial, where she is to testify as the offended party while he sits face to face with the woman as the defendant. It's long been established that this is not an isolated case. A long list of previous violations is already part of the indictment. In fact, the contact continues nevertheless, despite situations even more serious. A restraining order is not a formal order that lies in a drawer. It is a protection against pressure, against fear, against influence, and not least against any situation that could weaken an offended person's role as a witness. When the defendant and the victim are having a confidential conversation at a popular nightclub a few months before the main hearing in the district court, it's precisely the risk of witness tampering that makes the situation acute. This is not a hypothesis. That is why such prohibitions exist. Therefore, it is almost unreal that defense attorney met Yvonne Larson, who again is representing the young woman, is desperately trying to cool the heat when she describes the case as completely out of proportion. No defense attorney in any case can be comfortable with the victim and the defendant meeting in public just before a serious trial. Again, raises huge questions about the viability of this case. The fact that she tries to downplay the encounter does not, of course, exonerate the police, and it does not change the reality. The relationship she herself describes as casual is exactly what the restraining order makes illegal. And yes, she says the meetings were not planned. It could well be, but CEO Korg has information that shows that this is far from a single situation. It's happened several times, and when the coincidences become so numerous, they begin to resemble a pattern the police should have taken seriously long ago. And then again, the question, this is his mom here, Mette-Marit, is are they still handling him with kids' gloves because of who his mother and stepfather are? Defense attorney Peter Sekluk says that today he is in contact with the police about the basis for the restraining order. That is his role. But the role of the police is not up for discussion. In recent years, the prosecution and the judiciary have increased their focus and toughened the penalties in cases involving the R word here, domestic violence and threats. That is all that was needed. But the problem, as it appears in the case against the Crown Princess's son and the Crown Prince's stepson, is what signal effect it creates when the alarm goes off without the police acting quickly and effectively as they would if it were you or me accused. That is the rub there. And that's a very, very important. If it was you or me, like, we would be up on charges. But since it's him, maybe not so much. I'm going to see what we can see here from this little bit, because obviously it's a video scene like of Hakan and Mark. So the thing that we have seen as well is that Hakan, in my opinion, is not is a challenge because he keeps. Yes, I understand them as parents wanting to, address and try to help their son, but he has been doing this for years now, and it just seems to be like they're not really doing anything. Okay, so this is kind of so this is Marius and his stepdad out somewhere. So that is problematic as well, because what we've seen is sort of Marius gets to go on boys' trips. He gets to do all this stuff. He's facing 32 criminal charges. 32. Or 32 or 31, something to that effect. He's facing over 30 charges, including very serious essay allegations. So why are they doing boys' days? I don't think you guys helped in the first place, and I'm probably pretty sure you guys aren't helping very much right now. Again, this is a huge problem for the Norwegian monarchy for sure. And then another, of course, serious thing is that Aftenposten reported that Crown Princess Mette-Marit's son, Marius, allegedly Googled the difference between assault and RAPE after he was arrested. So he knows he's done bad things. And like we've seen that. Have you not seen this on true crime cases where the guy is Googling, mostly guys, sometimes it's a woman, guy Googling, what happens if I put antifreeze in her drink? How do I get antifreeze? How do I get bullets? Like this stuff happens all the time and he's caught out doing it too. So many red flags here. So many red flags. So that obviously huge case there in Norway. Very sad. But let's get to a couple of super chats here real quick. You have Christine Gilbert, who's been a member for 2 months. Thank you so much, Christine. And Carol said, thank you so much for the super chat. Why wasn't he arrested? Stalking his ex-girlfriends when they are witnesses. That's the big question. I don't know all the legalese of Norway, so I don't know why he wasn't, because I'm absolutely positive his second arrest was for violating the restraining order. I'm pretty sure that's why he was arrested. And so, like, again, the question is witness tampering, witness intimidation, all these sorts of things. Like, what is he doing? All his friends are criminals. Like, this has been well established. All his friends are criminals. So what is he doing? I don't know. I don't know what the Norwegian. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of questions though. Christine, thank you so much for the super chat. Said, thank you for your take on things, Brittany. Why, thank you. I know not everybody agrees with every take, but I think that's really important to share my thoughts and perspectives, even though people don't like it. And the reason is, or try to share things that people don't necessarily think about. And the reason is that number one, I really like to analyze things. And I think everybody is open to criticism. I firmly believe that. If you can't criticize somebody, you worship them, basically. And that's just not my jam. And so for me, it's very important that I'm able to share things, even if it's not something everybody agrees with. And I also think it strengthens Royal News Network overall, because if you don't like everything, at least maybe you hear out and maybe go, well, you have a point or two, but I still think in my idea, that's perfectly fine. That's what I want people to do. But I want people to be, I share my opinions and thoughts so people may go, hey, yeah, like that's different. And I think it shows a level of, I think, a like a standard, you could say, and unfailing, which I think is something that people generally do like, because if people kind of whip here and there with the tides and don't say what's on their mind, I don't think sometimes people respect that as much. But that's just my thought. Anyways, I like challenging discussions sometimes. Carol said, and thank you so much for the super chat, this is pathological behavior. Marius or his family doesn't realize how bad this is. Yes. And when you go through the indictment itself, there's obviously a huge revealing of a pattern of behavior, because one of the things that we have that they've shared is that he would often videotape these women he was assaulting. And so that comes with a level of, like, I would argue, you're kind of getting into serial killer territory there, because you need like a memento of your criminality there. You need a reminder of the things that you've done. So there's a level there of him that reminds me more of like a serial killer. And I don't use that lightly. I just feel like that is definitely the case for him. And so it's one of those things where it's just so sad that it's gotten to this level. But again, I go back to his parents. They knew there were problems. Mette Marit, his mother, the crown princess of Norway, the future queen, has been called down into his apartment on the royal yacht because he was having an argument with his girlfriend. He invited Hell's Angels into their home. He would hold parties in their home and things were stolen. So they have known for a long, long time that he was having some very, very serious problems and didn't really do anything about it. Now, obviously, that's my opinion, but I just don't see, like, this is a established pattern of behavior that has not gotten any better. Lizzie B, thank you for gifting one Royal News Network membership. I'm sure someone will appreciate that. And we have Christine as well, who also gifted an RNN membership. And we have Dizfan, who says, so wish Buckingham Palace would get on board with changing from Kate Middleton to Princess Catherine of Wales. The BBC has put the royal family through a lot. So I thank you so much for the super chat. I will say that's probably not really going to be the case. The palace, again, this is not a battle that's really worth fighting. It's really not. There are much more serious battles and much more serious issues to address. It's not worth it from a PR perspective to put your bandwidth into getting people to call her the Princess of Wales over Kate Middleton in a news article title. That is not worth a battle. That is not. Again, you want to, if you're a public figure, you want to save your capital for something that really truly matters. That way, because if you're going to the press, like Harry and Meghan do with every little slight, you're just going to antagonize them. You're just going to annoy them, and they will retaliate in the ways that they want to, and they'll probably make the situation worse. Honestly, one of the dumbest things Harry did was tell The Guardian, "Oh yeah, I hate being called stubborn." And I thought at the time, all I want to do now is call you stubborn all the time in like every single thing, because you've told me it annoys you. And if you are antagonistic to somebody, like the last thing you want to do is give them ammunition for you. So I think in that respect, this is not worth a battle. I think the palace tried at the very beginning of their marriage, realized it was going to be a losing battle, and just gave up. And I think that's a smart move. Just give up. This is not a battle worth fighting. It is not going to help in the long run. And people are going to do what people are going to do. They'll still call her Kate. Some will call her Catherine. Some will call her Princess Catherine, Princess Kate, whatever. People love her either way. And I think if she's going around demanding that you call her a particular thing, that's not going to go over particularly well. So I think this is definitely smart, in my personal opinion, to kind of let it go. Let it go. I think it's not what everybody wants, but overall, I think that's actually the smartest move you can make. Some things are just not really worth the effort. They're just really not. You have to choose your battles. You do. And I think that's a very, very smart thing to do. It's a good PR move. You're not going to just sort of, you could say, annoy people or what have you. And that's always important. Believe it or not, make the press your friends, not your enemies. Yes. So this is another case which I found really interesting and a bit surprising. And I can understand why, and why I use the picture of Queen Sylvia and Princess Madeline to display this article, because I initially saw it and saw one publication constantly using their image. And I'm like, why? Why are they using their image in this case? Like, did they have a special connection to this guy or something? But no. It comes down to is that in this particular case, we do have a queen who has a campaign against online harm against children, basically, and sexual exploitation, and having somebody who worked for them who was attempting to sexually exploit children. And that's obviously a huge problem. So let's get into this case. Now, obviously, again, this is from Aftenbladet. And so I will have to say, guys, obviously we're doing Google Translate here. I don't read the language. I don't know all the nuances. And sometimes the translations don't give you everything. But this is what we have. And it's important to know here, because I did find this out further in the article, as far as I'm aware, is that this guy was still actually working for the court when they discovered this. So it says a former court employee is suspected of several cases of sexual crimes against children. The man worked closely with the royal family and was also invited to a royal christening. When the court learned of this matter from the police, he was removed from service with immediate effect, says Margarita Thorguren. This is not my day. Head of information at the court. A concerned parent of a girl called the police after discovering her daughter had been chatting with an unknown person on Snapchat. Snapchat is one of the most, it's not a great app in some ways. It was the beginning of a child pornography case with a 50-year-old with close ties to the royal family as a suspect. They took this girl's phone and examined it. That's how this came to light, says prosecutor Thomas Ingman. The clues from the girl's phone led police to the suspect. The investigation against him grew rapidly. The police have managed to identify a total of 10 girls through chats and pictures on the man's phone. The girls were, according to the lawsuit filed against the man, between 7 and 14 years old when the man contacted them and chatted with them on the social media platform Snapchat. During a search of the suspect's home, 100 child pornography images were also found, and more girls not yet identified. In total, he is now charged with several counts of exploiting children for sexual posing, several counts of child pornography crimes, and for offensive photography. This is because, according to the indictment, he is also alleged to have secretly photographed a girl in a pool area. According to the investigation, the man pretended to be a young guy when he chatted with the children. He has simply groomed them, sent them hearts and compliments, and made them send pictures of themselves, a classic grooming, says the prosecutor. In addition, 10 girls who are also plaintiffs. There are more who have been vulnerable. The police found pictures of several girls in the man's home. These are girls that we have not yet identified. However, that work is still ongoing. The investigation into the man also found traces where he had discussions with other like-minded men. Crimes of this man allegedly occurred between January 1st, 2020 and March of 2023. When the police tracked the man down, he was employed by the court and also had a position where he worked closely with the royal family. When the court learned of this matter from the police in 2023, he was removed from service with immediate effect. According to what Aftenbladen has learned, the man has was invited to a royal baptism with a subsequent reception the period he worked at court. Head of Information Margarita Thornton states that the court's security procedures worked when they acted immediately and removed the man from service. The man will not return to service within the court in the future. So obviously, very serious case. Seems like the court has handled it really, really well. And it's really obviously concerning. And when you think of Princess Madeline and Queen Sylvia, they have the Foundation Childhood. It's when Sylvia started, that is trying to prevent children from such activity. And that this happened sort of under their noses is obviously, I think, to them probably a pretty grave concern and something that they are probably fairly disappointed that they weren't able to address or didn't see or whatever. But also a reminder that people do things that you can't control, and that even in the most rigorous of circumstances, things do pass through, and that you do have situations where people act inappropriately. And so he will never be employed by the court again. But I'm curious which, let's say, baptism it was. I imagine if it was in that time period where some of these alleged crimes occurred. And now that I think about it too, because the baptisms are where all the kids come out. And so that obviously raises even more concerns. We do have Princess Enz, who was baptized earlier this year. But I would imagine, since it was in 2023, I think it was probably the youngest kid of Prince Carl Philip and Princess Sophia. That would be my guess. But I don't honestly know for sure, because I think they're the only ones that had a baptism in that time period. Because Princess Adrian is the third youngest, I think, or maybe one of the other Carl Philip kids. I can't quite remember. But obviously something the court was very concerned about. Obviously, it's something that's making the rounds now. So it's a case that is something we'll continue to follow and see if there's anything that even more reflects sort of the involvement of the court in one way or another. Obviously, maybe not all of it does, but some of it might as well. So to kind of wrap up, we do have Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. Again, another long title, but I think people are kind of getting good on calling her Duchess Sophie. But anyways, the Duchess of Edinburgh, it says, this is from the royal website, it's visiting the South and Central America from Tuesday the 11th to Wednesday the 19th of November. Her Royal Highness will visit Peru, Panama, and Guatemala at the request of the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office. The Duchess will also visit Belize as part of the royal family's engagement with the realms. So in Peru, she did the visit to build on the celebration of 200 years of UK-Peru relations at the end of 2023, recognizing the strong historic and modern ties between the UK and Peru. The Duchess will also undertake engagements on themes including environmental protections and women's empowerment. So we have some great pictures here. Obviously, we didn't have, let's say, there was at least one photographer, I think, following her for this trip. But when you are a woman in the family and you're sort of lower in the line of succession, you're just not going to get as much attention. That's just kind of how things roll. And that's something obviously Meghan couldn't deal with. But we do have some lovely pictures of Sophie. I think most of these are in Peru. And there's a cute one with her and a baby turtle. But I wish the royal family had a better website. That's all I got to say. So they do have some of the trip here kind of identified, but I don't think all of it yet because we end on November 14th and obviously it's November 18th. So this was quite a packed tour, it was quite a long tour. So we do know she ended and got to visit with the Peruvian president. So there she is there. And it's interesting. We had William in Brazil. We had Prince Albert in Brazil. And then he was also recently in Paraguay. We have King Carl Gustaf and Queen Sylvia of Sweden also in Brazil for the COP30 conference. So we do have that going on there as well. And then we do have Sophie Winkleman. The royal family's lives are total hell. So she is the wife of Lord Frederick Windsor. And so she married into the royal family. And it's sort of funny here. We don't really have time to go into much of this article. But what's sort of interesting is that apparently she had her mother-in-law pretty much decide everything about her wedding. Her mother-in-law even picked out her wedding dress, which I'm like, I don't know if I could do that because I'd want a level of control. But here's what she says about the royal family. She says, the more I get to know the royal family, the more I get that their lives are in total hell, and that level of unasked for fame is a form of torture. None of them went on Pop Idol or something to be famous. To have that sort of blinding spotlight in your face from when you're born, not knowing quite whom you can trust, not knowing if someone's going to betray you, people writing lies about you the whole time is just brutal. I feel for them all. I don't think a life with that much scrutiny and pressure is remotely healthy, but they have no choice. Now, what's interesting as I'm reading that and just something to keep in mind is obviously we can all reflect on how that's something that would be obvious. If you're a member of royal family, it would be really tough to have the spotlight constantly on you and from the time you're born and the challenges. And there are ways again to actually sort of reflect that, I think, publicly in a way that is, let's say, educational and also a way for the various, let's say, members of the royal family to kind of, especially Harry and Meghan, to really get people in some ways on their side by really kind of reflecting this. And I think a more constructive way than Harry and Meghan did. So I do appreciate that like quite a bit. I think she's, of course, 100% correct. And I think it's a great way for her to share some of the realities of being behind the scenes. Now, I did want to get to this here real quick. And I don't know all, you could say the legalese behind this, but this is Viscount Stansgate, and this is Baroness Anderson of Stoke-on-Trent. And so there's kind of interesting questions over how much Charles was actually able to do. So the question is to ask His Majesty's government whether they plan to bring legislation before Parliament to give effect to the decision of the King to remove all titles from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So Baroness answered, following the statement made by Buckingham Palace on the 30th of October, the entitlement to the title of Prince and styling of Royal Highness has been removed by letters patent. The title of Duke of York has been removed from the roll of the peerage and will no longer be used officially. There is therefore no need for legislation to implement the measures that have been announced. So this is sort of, again, you could say a little bit of a curiosity here. And you got to wonder, oh, so is Andrew not really fully stripped of his titles? That's what we all thought. But yeah, that's again a fascinating, interesting question, something definitely to explore in the future. But yeah, obviously a little concerning there to all who was hoping this was like final, but maybe not so much. But let's move on. Just a couple of real quick things here. And I have noticed this, so I just thought this would be fun to point out, is that the title here, this is from Ola, Coincidence or Destiny, the Curious Trait Shared by Leonor Amalia of the Netherlands and William of England, explained by psychiatrists. So if you read the small text, you can see what they share, or if you think about the picture there, you can see what they all share. So if you guys want to guess, you are welcome to do so. And this would actually be a good little trivia question. But what do all three of these future queens and a king share in common is that they are all left-handed. And so I did notice that with Amalia recently, and I noticed that with Leonor too. And we obviously know William is left-handed. So it's actually kind of fascinating to think that all of them are left-handed. So, and we do have we don't usually do Japan, but Princess Aiko of Japan is enjoying her first overseas trip on behalf of her father, Emperor Naruhito. She is going to spend 6 days in Laos to celebrate 70 years of diplomatic relations between the countries. And so it is very sad to me that she will not become empress on her own. That is how the Japanese basically have written their, I don't know if you call it a constitution or what have you, but this is how it is written. And then we also have the sad reality is that she can choose not to marry and retain her title, but if she's married, she loses her title and she's basically kicked out of the royal house. Like you are literally put in a car, given some money and shoved off. And I'm just like, I just find that so sad. I just find that really sad. So she seems lovely, but I do find it sad. And so last but not least, Queen Letizia, apparently the Fleur de Lis tiara will be in a new National Heritage exhibition in Madrid celebrating Queen Victoria Eugenie. So I am really excited for that because I have a personal passion to photograph as many tiaras as humanly possible. So I am excited for that possibility. And I think they say here when this gallery, or at least they did in another article. So it runs from December 2nd to April 5th. So I may have to figure out a reason to go in that direction. So that is all we have for the Crown Report today. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll get to some of your questions. And Sir Squirrel-a-Lot says, what happens if Princess Aiko marries a prince? So you do get to keep your title if you marry a prince. The unfortunate thing is there's not really any princes in Japan anymore, except for like her cousin. So they did, I'm not, again, certain about all the kind of stipulations or regulations within the kind of history of Japan and how this worked. But at some point, what they did is they stripped a whole bunch of people of their various titles. And so when you had that particular situation, like you basically just cut off all the possibility of really any of the women being titled again, because there are no men to marry. There are literally no men to marry with the title of prince anymore in Japan. So they have severely restricted the royal household to such an extent that there is one single guy who is able to actually take the throne of Japan. And yes, technically the emperor's brother is going to take the throne after him. But the real future emperor of Japan, because it might even pass over his brother, because if Naruhito lives a long time like his father, they might just pass it directly to the next one in line, which is technically Naruhito's nephew. So the nephew, basically the entire future of the Japanese monarchy is on his shoulders. The Japanese imperial household, all on him. All on him. He has to have a son. If he doesn't, it is dead. It is effectively a dead monarchy. And I think it's time to change the rules. I think it's time to allow women to take the throne because all the guys keep having girls. And so if the son has more girls too, you guys are screwed. Because there's not really anybody else. Unfortunately, that's how they have designed it. And of course, you know, the reason why, obviously, Empress Masako, if I got her name right, is wanted to have more children, of course, but the immense pressures by the imperial system on women is to such an extent that most of the empresses go crazy because they, like, the former empress, she had a bout of selective mutism, and so did the current empress. And they said she had something called adjustment disorder. It's like, oh, you mean that you're so oppressive that the woman basically, and she was a well-accomplished, well-educated woman, spoke multiple languages, went to Harvard, very, very intelligent woman, was like cowed by this like extremely, extremely rigid system. It's like, okay, you guys have a broken system that you have to fix. The monarchy is not going to survive. Like, you're basically the whole future of the Japanese monarchy, imperial family, longest serving monarchy on earth, basically all depends on if this guy has kids, like boys or not. If his wife survives. That's the whole thing. So not a great plan. Not a great plan. So we do have Christina B, who gifted 1 Royal News Network membership. Why, thank you so much, Christina. So again, let's get to some of these questions. So Alice Ransom Raves says, Brittany, the issues of the British chivalry is that we have no written constitution, so many things are just done by custom or tradition. There are no official means for a lot of things. That is a great point that I didn't consider. And so, yeah, that's just something that, it's going to make it hard. So again, we shall see. So Alice also says, I think George VI was left-handed, but was made to use his right hand. Yeah, they did force that quite a bit, which I find kind of sad. Find kind of sad. Although I like that you don't, if you write left-handed, you have the tendency potentially like smudge a lot of the ink. So I always found that to be like, I felt bad for the people who wrote left-handed that they might get ink on their hands more, because I was like, oh. Daryl says the tortoise is cute. It is. Sir Squirrel Lot says, does he have to be Japanese? So that is where I'm not certain. But when it comes to within Japan, there are no more princes. Susie said Prince William is left-handed. He is. So Alice says, my uncle is ambidextrous, but favors his right. So I had to learn a little bit to write with my left hand when I broke my right. So Rit says, I miss Queen Mary's flawless curtsy. It was like no other. I do like Amalia's because hers is combined with a bow, which I love. Yes. And she's tall, so it like looks even more impressive because you have to like really move. It was very funny to watch her bowing to Queen Sylvia, because Queen Sylvia is like Maxima and Amalia are like that. So that was kind of funny. Abertasso says the Japanese imperial royal system doesn't seem to leave the female members with many options. Yes, the rules seem like they need to be changed. In order to survive, I think they're going to have to. Phoenix on Molokai says, Elizabeth was a wonderful ruler for 40 plus years. Koala says, goodness, what pressure, poor guy. But if you plant a cucumber, you can't get a tomato. Yeah. TV channel says, hi, Brittany, do you still have hope King Charles will take Harry's title away next year? I think it will be better if Charles ends the drama before William is king. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, Charles needs to do it. Again, Harry's deluded idea that somehow if he tells his family he's going to do something that somehow gives him a royal seal of approval is insane. You're not dealing with somebody who can grasp reality here, and you're going to be the one to set the boundaries. But Charles, I think, again, desperately wants a relationship with his son. I will not fault him for that. But his son, unfortunately, will not extend the courtesy and respect that he should, therefore making this situation very, very difficult, I think. Sir Squirrelot says, no doubt, wonderful country and people. Yes. Shaz says, didn't the emperor's sister have to give up her titles to marry a non-entitled man? So one of them did. I think one of the emperor's sisters did. One of them, I think a couple of them have never married, I think in part because of that. But then you also have, that was actually the current emperor's niece. So that was very public. Her husband's mother had, and this is like the craziness of some aspects of Japanese society, which is very much like an honor shame style society, that his mother had some sort of like unpaid debts or something. And that became a huge scandal on him, as if like he was responsible for his mother's dealings or something. It was quite wild. And so they had to like apologize for that. And they like bowed to the media and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh. Phoenix on Molokai says, my mother tried to make my left-handed daughter to use her right hand, but she's a lefty. Yeah, I don't know why people are so fascinated with making people write with their left hand or right hand if they're left-handed. I don't get it. Shaz says, I think he was right-handed more, but left than left, but some parts of his job had to use the left hand to help teach my niece how to write. Yeah. Mahit Bell says, just popping in for a minute. Hello. Blue Sky says, Sophie is also left-handed. I did not know that. Dallas says, I agree. Charles needs to take responsibility for his son. Yes, I do. Karen Lisa says, Brittany, I understand your point about the internet, and I agree to a point. However, could be because I'm British, but even after all this time, I am used to Catherine, Princess of Wales. Yes. And like people who follow royals, which again is most people who, let's say, follow my channel, follow royals. Like most of them know it, but thinking beyond that to the vast majority of the population, most of them still use Kate Middleton. Gretchen says, aren't a lot of European royal families related through Queen Victoria somehow? I wonder if the left-handedness is a genetic thing from long ago. It seems to touch multiple countries and generations. That definitely could be. So I know obviously a descendant of Victoria married into, I believe, the Spanish monarchy, the Swedish monarchy, which bled down into the Danish monarchy because Margaret of Connaught, her obviously great grandson or great grandson, became king of Sweden, and then one became queen of Denmark because she was born a Swedish princess, married into the Danish monarchy. And then I think because the Norwegian monarchy is an offshoot technically of the Swedish and Danish, that they're probably descended from Queen Victoria as well. The Dutch, I don't think so immediately, although they are fairly high up in the line of succession. But I don't know if it is through Queen Victoria or not. I don't know. We do have the Spanish, I think, because Victoria Eugenie was from, obviously, Queen Victoria. She was a descendant of Queen Victoria. Belgium, that I'm not sure. So, but yes, several. She was considered the grandmother of Protestant Europe. And she did have descendants, of course, in the Romanovs in Russia too, which were unfortunately mostly wiped out. Ritz says Harry and Meghan have faced no consequences for their horrible behavior for years and just continue to leave massive stain on the monarchy. It's disgusting. Yes. Sure. Squirrel Law says one is very happy in NYC. Yes, she is. I think she had a baby not too long ago. Princess Goose says some crazy headlines from mainstream media said Prince William was taking actions for Harry to return to the royal family. Yeah, no, William doesn't want Harry. He doesn't want Harry at all there in the family. Alice says, my personal theory is that Charles dealt with Andrew and William will deal with Harry. They will each deal with their brothers. That I'm going to guess that's probably going to be the case. So let's theorize here. And again, I don't know this for sure, but a good potential theory is that if Charles, let's say, knows he's terminal, knows it's stage 4 or something, that the continuing treatment is helping him and it could help him live another 10 years, or he can live another 5 or 3 years or something to that effect. If Charles knows that there's sort of an incoming deadline, which sounds kind of callous, but if he knows that's coming, he could make you could say the executive decision to say with William, hey, I will deal with Andrew, you deal with Harry. But again, it's got to be something because he wants to have a relationship with Harry while he has his last moments on Earth. And I totally understand that and respect that. But the challenge here is that Harry needs to be the one who acts here and needs to be the mature one. And he just can't seem to do that. And I don't think they should be waiting and anticipating Harry doing the right thing because Harry is not going to do the right thing. Carol said Charles could test Harry if his reconciliation is genuine by stripping the titles HRH and take him off the website. Yes. Dallas says you used to be considered a witch if you used your left hand. Yes, I think that is right. Pen P says, do you think that the RF is giving Harry and Meghan more rope to silence themselves? The more lies, the less the royal family has to take action. I don't think so. I just think, again, this is a complicated family dynamic where Charles wants to salvage his relationship with Harry and doesn't want to take the ultimate step if he still thinks that there's an avenue left. And it's sad that Charles has to think that way. Ritz says those right-handed desks in class were brutal for us Southpaws. Once in a while, there was a lefty desk, which I tried to snag. Yes, they did introduce that. Mateo says Swedish court scandal. Yes, so it is a former employee was caught in a sex scandal, and he was trying to potentially contact and groom underage girls. And so obviously that's a very, very serious offense. And he was working with the palace, and the police informed the palace of this, and he was fired, basically. Phoenix says Charles may want a relationship with Harry, but is delusional at this point to think that Harry would be much of a loving son to Charles. I agree with that. But love can make us do crazy things. Leo says that makes sense. I have an Asian family. My mom says I need to take care of her as an adult because it's seen as dishonorable if I don't. Yes, I can't remember. I think there's 3 different general societal views. And it's one of them's honor and shame. One of them's ours, which is more I can't remember. Let's see if we can look it up here because I have always been curious. Let's see. So they say there's three. So there's the guilt society, there's the shame society, and the fear society. So guilt, which would be ours, the guilt over behaviors that the individual believes are undesirable, which I feel like would be more Western. Shame is more Asian and some Arab cultures. And then fear, I think, would be more is fear of retribution. Worldview focuses on physical dominance. A person in this culture may ask, will someone hurt me if I do this? Interesting. Very interesting. So, yeah. An interesting thing. I remember somebody telling me that. I'm like, oh, yeah. Ritz says, I wish grumpy King Carl Gustaf would abdicate and let Victoria step in. It's time. I kind of wish so too. I honestly say, and I believe this to be true, I think abdication actually revitalizes a monarchy. P Pacific says, have to mention that when I met Her Royal Highness Diana, Princess of Wales, I called her simply Diana. Yes, just Diana. Don't sweat it, folks. Yeah, don't think too hard about it. They to live in this world, you kind of like to be a public figure, like a royal. You kind of have to accept everybody as they come. If you're constantly standing there going, they're not addressing me by the correct title, you'll be miserable, and that will inevitably surface in your behavior with people. If you are expecting and demanding a certain treatment and people are just not going to give that to you, you can't sit there and be miserable that they're calling you by your nickname instead of your name or whatever, because you will be miserable. I would say just take things as they come and be flexible. I think it's better. Alice says, I heard a theory that if you're left-handed, then you had a right-handed twin who never developed, but it's only a theory. Interesting. Carol said, Queen Maud of Norway is direct descendant of Victoria. Why, thank you. Carol and Mateo says, Norwegian is a descendant of Queen Victoria via Queen Maud, Queen Alexandra's daughter. Yeah, and Queen Alexandra was from Denmark too, as well. And she married Edward, was he Edward the Seventh? I believe it was Edward the Seventh, who was the son of Victoria. Yava says, more dentists are left-handed. Ooh, interesting. Twinkie says, left-handed dominance was seen as weak-minded and a mark of evil in some societies. Daryl says, oh my goodness, the Japanese is such a different culture. Very different culture. Very, very different culture. Pen P says, King Charles is now seeing more on a daily basis that Harry's not going to support the firm without a paycheck. Yeah, well, he's not going to support the firm either way. Really, it's all self-serving. And Harry walked away, and that should tell you everything about Harry. Venus on Molokai says, no disrespect, but Charles has been a lame, weak king. I agree with that in some respects. Daryl says, really, no wonder that he developed a stutter then. Montana says, I suspect Harry is an addict, just my opinion, so he would almost be impossible to deal with rationally. I don't know if I would go that far, but is he not connected to reality? Yes. Ritz says, not to be morbid, but the uncertainty over King Charles's time on the throne, Harry Meghan will cause more damage for years to come. Ugh. Yeah, and it's just sort of one of those things that is just very, very, like, it's sad, it's challenging, and it does put King Charles, I think, in a lame duck status. Like, he obviously can't say he's not cancer-free. He can't say he's in remission. They've never used that terminology for him, while they have with Catherine. And that, again, to me, and that he's still ongoing with treatment. Yes, there are different cancers. Like, I had some people who are really up on this idea that, oh my gosh, like, people are just giving up on Charles before, whatever. But it's just going to be one of those things where most likely if you're in constant treatment, your cancer prognosis isn't great. Koala says, sorry, but Harry has to prove time and time again he's no longer trustworthy. Very true. Laveda says, left-handed people were considered sinister. The nurses that show I remembered for eyes OS is for the left eye. Phoenix says, Charles is not the brightest bulb in the shop. Sadly, he keeps allowing Harry and his wife to run roughshod. It's not that he is not the brightest, but he, like, if the guy has 5 years left, he wants a relationship with his son. I don't think it's nice to fault him for that. Carol said one is family honor. Lynn says, I believe left in Latin is also meant sinister. Oh, interesting. Sir Scrollaw says, I'm surprised King Charles isn't funding the Sussexes to keep them under control. He's definitely not. Again, there's this idea that there's a whole bunch of money floating around within the British monarchy to like endlessly fund Harry and Meghan. There really isn't. Because right now, Charles is tasked with basically supporting every working member of the royal family. So that's himself, his wife, his brother Andrew, who, yes, no longer working royal, but he's going to fund him forever until he dies. Then you have Anne, Edward and Sophie. And then to a certain extent, you probably have the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester and the Duke of Kent. All those people, in one way or another, Charles is helping to support. That's a lot of people. William has his own family. Obviously, they have investments and various things, but it's this, and they also have, Charles also has Balmoral and Sandringham. Exceptionally large estates, exceptionally difficult to maintain such a large property. So this idea that they have a ton of cash lounging around to throw at Harry and Meghan to keep them satisfied is just no. They don't have that much liquid cash. Daryl says Harry is an arrogant in his disrespect. Yes, he is. Rich says sinister one right here. Alice says, I hate to speculate, but I truly believe Charles is iller than we know, and I'm most certain that King William will be king in less than 5 years. We shall see, but I would not be surprised if that is true. Mehibel says the Norwegian family is descended from Desiree Clary and her husband, just French. Their last name is still Bernadotte, the same last name of Desiree and her husband. Yes, it is. Princess Goose says, I care for my elderly mother, although that's more the Swedes than the Norwegians, because the Swedes are still Bernadotte. Although, again, the Norwegians are offsuit of the Swedes. I would just have to do a bit more research. Princess Goose says, I care for my elderly mother, at least for now. I'm disabled, so as long as I can take care of her. Phoenix says, Meghan commands people call her Duchess, a Duchess, or Ma'am. Ma'am. So, Brittany, I don't know if you realize you're calling Armistice Day, Artemis Day. I was attempting to pronounce it. My pronunciations aren't great. Now, if I had all the time in the world and an assistant to write out all the pronunciations for me, we would be good, but you don't always have those options. So Sir Squirrel says, hit like to get the numbers up. Be sure you are subscribed. Why, thank you. Koala says, heck, if I meet any of the royals, my head would spin and I'd get tongue-tied and sound like a mumbling fool. Yes, I don't even know if I called Catherine Kate or Catherine or whatever. All I said is, can I get a selfie, please? That's all I said. At least all I remember saying. Pen P says, if they do not direct the appropriate title, then you become Meghan Markle. Yeah, if you're somebody who's demanding everybody call you a particular thing, you become Meghan Markle. So that's not a good thing. Princess Goose said, Alexander's father got great marriages for his daughters. He did. So I was going to guess Alexandra of Denmark, who became Queen Alexandra of the UK. I would imagine. So Christine says, why don't they call Camilla Parker Bowles or Duchess of Cornwall? They've switched from Prince Charles to King Charles. It's just a slight at this point. It's really, really not. And this is the end of the road. These are their final titles, King Charles, Queen Camilla. So that's much easier. Catherine still has one other change to make, which will be Queen Catherine. So again, you have this situation where things are constantly changing and some things are just simpler than others. And Duchess of Cornwall is long, Queen Camilla is short. People have like it's sort of the final iteration. Again, when you have somebody who is the title is constantly changing. Again, Catherine has had 4 names so far. Kate Middleton or Catherine Middleton. You can add that, and that makes it 5. Then you have Duchess of Cambridge, Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge, and now Princess of Wales. That's 5 names. That's a lot of names. So we will get to one more, which will be Queen Catherine. And I think that one will stick because it's simple. It's easy. It doesn't have the cumbersome nature of the person's name, the Duchess of something, the Prince of something, the Princess of something. It's just the British system is more complicated than some. And so again, when you get to the end, and even when I'm uploading a video, I will still put in Prince Charles in like I can do a like kind of other words type thing. I'll put in Prince Charles. And for Catherine, I'll put in Kate Middleton, Catherine Middleton, Princess Catherine, Princess Kate Middleton, That's what I do. So you don't see that, but that is the metadata for YouTube to know as well that people use other names for things. Daryl says there is a Chopin story called Desiree Baby. It's heartbreaking. Oh. Phoenix on Molokai says, I'm in remission, but there are no guarantees when it comes to cancer. Charles needs to stop using cancer as a crutch to not be a strong king. That's a good point. I hope you're doing well and better. And yeah, if you have cancer, there's always a concern. Will it come back? And I think that's definitely something Catherine lives under for sure. And I imagine Charles as well. Charles needs to be a king first and a dad second or abdicate. I agree. Rich says, so if Harry and Meghan's behavior continues to be ignored indefinitely and left for William to handle, that's a horrible strategy because they will continue to be on the crazy train to destruction. Unbelievable. I agree. Lynn says the family dynamics can't be separated at this point for the RF. That is true too. It is a firm and it's family too. And so that makes it complicated. So Kawala says, I'm just curious, once William takes the throne, if Zara, Louise and James will be working roles in support of William. No, Zara's too far down the line of succession. So are Louise and Lady Louise and James. They would not be. P Pacific says, I believe King Charles is looking darn well. I had the honor of meeting him. He is awesome fun. That's awesome. Najma says, I actually know a person who has met her and told her my name is, and she told her my name is Catherine. In any case, she deserves respect. She has a title. People making money off her by calling her Kate is simply rude. Again, it's really not. It's just, it is what it is. So Pen P says, do you think it will be Queen Kate? In social media this day, Queen Kate can get a lot more words than header. That is true. But it depends on obviously the article. But again, every time, guys, I title a video, every single word is carefully considered. I reword them time and time again to get all the keywords I want to into the title. So yeah. Oops. Lynn says, I still call them the Washington Redskins. I don't think it'll change. Habit of lifetime. Yep. Was sign of the devil to be a lefty, Debbie says. Shaz says, Brittany, some people are saying Harry and Meghan are working with the government to disband the monarchy. What are your thoughts? That's just hogwash. Like, are some people using Catherine, like Harry and Meghan to, like, and using them in a way to undermine the monarchy? Yes. But are they actually working together? No. Phoenix says, oh, geez, I hope they stop calling her Kate. She will be Queen Catherine. They probably won't. They just won't. And that's just something that people need to just accept and I think move on from. This is not really a battle worth fighting. It's really not. There are other, I think, more serious issues than the name. Najma says, so if a woman, I say I prefer being called Catherine, you insist on calling her Kate? No, I'm just saying that most people know her by Kate and she'll drive herself crazy if she's thinking all the time, oh, why don't people just call me Catherine? Why is everybody calling me Kate? I hate that so much. You will feel that. It's honestly not productive. It's really not. Lynn says, we all use King Charles III, BRF, Will and Kate. No disrespect intended. It's just a word count issue. 100%. 100%. Sometimes that is just the case. Debbie says, handedness is not genetic. It's a brain issue. Najma says, besides, we all like to be called by our earned titles. Why don't you guys afford her that? I mean, she didn't technically earn it. She just married the guy who happens to have the title. So when it comes to earning it, she didn't technically earn it. It's just the outcome of her marriage to a guy. So, Phoenix says we should start calling Harry simply Has. People do. Jill C says, Naj, I think everyone being told someone prefers using a different name, not common. Yeah. And again, Palace has never fought really this issue much, except for at the beginning of the marriage. And that's because they knew it was a losing battle. So they gave it up. And I think, honestly, that was the smart move. This is not really a battle worth fighting. It is what it is. And you may just end up really annoying people more than you're actually helping her. You might actually annoy people who might like her more if you're constantly telling them you shouldn't call her that name. Her name is this, that, whatever. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that at the end of the day, I don't really think is that helpful. So we're going to wrap up here in a second. Rid says, I had a coworker named Barbara who used to be addressed by another coworker as Barb. Was she detested, but never said a word? Oh, well, not meant to be hurtful, just annoying. Yeah. 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 I think, yeah. Pen P says 50-50 she did give birth to the next king. I mean, she did. But again, it's just one of those things. People know her as Kate. They just do. They just do. Najma says, I think after all these years of service, she's earned it. You are welcome to call her that. Other people will. Again, I'm talking about the vast majority of people on the planet who don't cover royals or talk about royals that much. They know her as Kate Middleton. So that is just what it is. It's not a sign of disrespect. That's just all they know. There's a lot of ignorance out there. And I think it's just, sort of just a reality that not everybody is going to be as passionate as you are about something. And so just better to let it go. Salamence says, do you think she will be called Queen Kate when she becomes queen? Definitely. So when it comes to especially titles and news pieces, like printed news pieces, yes, that's a distinct possibility from like the Sun, the Mail, the Express, the Telegraph, or sorry, not the Telegraph. Those will be more likely to call her Queen Kate at times, but times the Telegraph will call her Catherine. Yeah, Alice says it's not a huge deal, and she doesn't care that much. Chill, everyone. Yeah, I don't really think she cares that much. Red says, I love seeing Catherine in those beautiful, colorful robes at the coronation. Future queen in the house. Yes. Lynn says, I think the anti-monarchists in the British media will continue to call her Kate. And, well, kind of everybody will. Jill C says, she did look beautiful. She did. So, guys, we will go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And we shall speak again very soon.